in bodybuilding, people are taking testosterone, they're taking anabolics in order to get more of a hormonal boost, and you just change the way you eat and you double your testosterone right off the bat. I mean, that's a massive advantage as an athlete.
Hello, carnivores, and welcome to session number 91 of the #1 bodybuilding podcast in the United Kingdom. Dr. Anthony Chaffee needs absolutely no introduction, especially on this channel, but I'll certainly give him one anyway, just in case you're unfamiliar with this man and his work. Dr. Anthony Chaffee is an American medical doctor and neurosurgical registrar in Australia, who over a span of 20 plus years has researched the optimal nutrition for human performance and health. It is his assertion that most of the so-called chronic diseases that we treat are caused by the food we eat or don't eat, and how that can be improved, and in some cases even reversed with dietary changes to a species-specific diet. He began university at the age of 16, studying molecular and cellular biology with a minor in chemistry, which culminated into an MD from the Royal College of Surgeons. He is an All-American rugby player, former professional player in England and America, and has also trained in MMA fighting and AMC Kickboxing in Kirkland, Washington. More recently, he volunteered as a doctor in the refugee camps in Bangladesh, helping the survivors of the 2017 genocide in Burma of the Rohingya people. Before we get into the meat, here's our Spotify podcast review of the week. It is from Ayana Fuentes from Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. She says, "Great podcast. Sugar and bread are a no for me." That's in response to our session from a few weeks ago, number 76, caffeine, Kellogg's, and crack cocaine, all about addictions. Thanks a lot, Pilar. Sugar and bread are a no for everybody, and small amounts won't kill anybody too fast, but it's important to call out these edible food-like substances for what they are, as not actual nutrition, if we want to get onto ourselves and want to make progress in our health. Dr. Chaffee, welcome to Carnivore Coach's Corner, sir.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's great to meet you.
Great to meet you too. Piggybacking off of what I was just saying about Pilar, who wrote in, have you had any sugar, bread, or candies or sweets, anything like that lately?
No. I've never really had much of a sweet tooth anyway, but I haven't had any of that stuff in over 7 years now. So, and before that wasn't much. It was very, very rare that I'd have something sweet or bread or anything. I've never just been a big bread carb sort of person. I was always focused on meat anyway. And then
Wow.
I'd throw in like a salad or some veggies because you're supposed to eat that garbage, or you were supposed to. Now you're not.
Right.
And so I just did that. But no, haven't had anything sweet in close to a decade.
Wow. You're an inspiration to all of us, especially me. Yeah, sweet tooth before the carnivore diet was my thing, and I'm currently 4 weeks into a strict lion diet without caffeine or artificial sweeteners or anything like that. And so, this interview kept me on track for that. And to be honest, I probably would have bailed out after about 2 weeks. I was like, I'm going to have to look him in the eye and tell him whether I stuck with it or not. So,
good job. Yeah.
Well, thanks. What's a typical day of eating look like for you lately? I know you're traveling a lot. Are you still on like the ribeye every day kind of thing? And
Yeah, pretty much. So, if I'm at a house, somewhere I can buy groceries and pack the fridge, I typically will get, ribeye, loins, and then cut them up into steaks, and so that's what I have now. So yeah, still just eating ribeyes every day.
cool.
Usually one big meal at one go, and then I'm good for the rest of the day and the next day.
Right on. Eating through the holidays. That's something that you didn't even you don't even deviate and entertain the sweets and the pies and the cakes and anything like that, huh? Like I guess you're saying that just having like a little bit more special of a steak or cook it a different way is entertaining enough, and then it's right back to business, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and maybe you get like a special tomahawk, or you might splurge on something extra nice as far as meat is concerned. But because I'm wet aging, dry aging, and preparing my steaks in a very particular way that has a lot of, that has some effort that went into it before it ever hits the pan or the grill. they're just really high quality steaks. You know, I said once, when I was getting started on this, that, like, it's just every day felt like my birthday, because on my birthday, we would always have, like, just the special meal, just you can eat whatever you want, it's your birthday, and my mom would always make us, like, really special dinners, and I would always pick, I just want just a lot of steaks. I just wanna eat steak until I don't wanna eat it anymore. And so she'd make these really nice big steaks, and I'd just eat as much meat as I could, and I didn't eat anything else. It was just meat. And now that's what I was doing every single day, and every single day is wet age and dry age. It's like a Michelin star steak every single day, and it's absolutely amazing. I eat as much of it as I want to, and so every day feels like my birthday. Every day feels like the holidays. I don't really need to spruce it up more than that. There's nothing really more special than I can do, than what I do every day, which is nice, because if you're only cooking meat, you get really good at cooking meat, and so my
Right.
steaks turn out really well. But, I have no interest in deviating from this at any time of the year, be it the holidays or anything else. I mean, I look at eating the other things. I don't look at it as food. And, you put uh, a plate full of, Krispy Kremes in front of a koala, it's not going to know what to do with that. That's not food to a koala. It's just like, all right, whatever. And that's how I look at that. I don't look at that as food. It's entertainment. It is a drug. There are a lot of drugs in there. They make it as addictive as possible, and I
Yeah.
just have no interest in it. And so, some people will say, "Well, you never do anything else, like even on your birthday, even on a holiday, even as a special occasion." And I asked him, I was like, "Do you smoke meth?" And they're like, "Well, no, of course not." It's like, "Well, not even on your birthday, like a special occasion? Like, I mean, not even then?" And they're like, "Oh, okay, all right, I get it." Because, like, if it's just something you just don't want to do, you just don't want to have, then you're not tempted by it, regardless of the season.
Yeah. You're famous for saying, um, you say this in like in pretty much every interview,
Mhm.
that the doctor that you were studying under was saying that, I don't eat vegetables, I don't eat fruits, and I don't even let my kids eat them. And you say
Yeah.
that around most people, and they look at you like you're crazy.
We have classified, categorized, quantified about a million different defensive chemicals that plants make to defend themselves. That's the reality. Now we can look into just how harmful these substances are and at what doses and exposures, but they are there. They do exist, and even in the
Hmm.
foods that we eat commonly, most of them have to be cooked and prepared and fermented and treated in ways that we've been doing traditionally. And it's like, there's certain ways you don't eat certain beans raw. You just don't, because they're not safe. 5 red kidney beans uncooked have put people in the hospital according to the WHO.
Yeah.
So, we have to do these things to denature these toxins, but it doesn't completely get rid of them. So we need to understand that. We just need to look into this, more fully, and have an open mind about this, and just realize that these things exist. These toxins do exist. They do have harmful potentials in our body. And so just eating them willy-nilly, or God forbid being a freaking vegan and just, pretending that we're herbivores all of a sudden, even though we've been apex predators for millions of years, is it's not going to get you to where you want to be with your health goals. And so,
Yeah.
people just don't respect plants. Like, this is the most dominant form of life on earth. Like 98% of the biomass on earth is plant life. And so, you ignore that at your own peril, because, like, they are some of the most successful forms of life that have ever lived. And in fact, they've been around longer than most other species ever. You get down to, like, different, prokaryotes, and, sort of single-celled organisms and things like that. That's going to be the only other sort of thing. But plants have been around forever. And the fact that you just think that, oh, they're just there for us to eat, everything's fine. You're gonna run into trouble, head first.
Yeah. Well, and it just makes common sense that, uh, like, how you say, what's a hippopotamus's defense mechanism? It can charge you, right? Like a cow can charge you. A lion can eat you. What can a plant do? They fight back with toxic chemical warfare.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they're not. They're not mobile. They don't have kinetic defenses. They can't run away or fight back like other animals can.
Yeah.
You get too close to a moose in the wild, like it's going to come after you and it's going to try to kill you. Not because it's hunting you, not because it's going to try to eat you, because it doesn't want you hunting it or eating it. And so
Yeah.
if it feels that you're a threat, it's going to try to kill you. And it's going to do that to wolves, it's going to do that to bears and anything. It's going to fight back or run away. And that's what a plant is going to do. Because a plant can't run away, they have to have these inbuilt defenses all the time. There are some plants that are so toxic that they exude a cloud of chemicals that if you get too close to them and breathe them in, you'll die. There's actually a garden in England, and it's famous for being sanctuary for the most toxic plants in the world. And and it says on the front of the gates, it says, warning, these plants can kill.
Hmm.
And so you go in there, and some of the groundskeepers who, this is their job, looking after these sorts of plants and knowing how dangerous they are and knowing how to be around them. Some of the people that work there, including I believe the head groundskeeper at one point, actually did get too close, did, touch something they weren't supposed to, and died. They died from these plants that were in there, and they weren't even trying to eat them. They just got too close,
Wow.
you know. So, we have to respect these things, and just eating these things, just thinking like, oh, everything's fine, because Nestle said so. It's a bad idea.
Right. Yeah, there's so many plants that are toxic, and I can't think of anything on the lion diet that's toxic at all. My favorite Simpsons quote is probably, "I've never heard of a poisonous pork chop." So,
Oh yeah.
um,
And you don't make friends with salad.
for sure. So, do you believe that there's any place for plants in a proper human diet other than short-term medicinal purposes? I can't think of any personally. There's let's see, honey and fruit. I swear, it's like when people are on the carnivore diet for a while and they get bored with it for whatever reason, that uh, I assume that they're probably not doing something right, because the longer I've been on the carnivore diet, the less I crave carbs. But
Hmm.
um, are you a fan of ever adding in any kind of carbohydrates, like fruit or like honey? And I guess honey is debatable whether it's even a plant product or not. I kind of think it is, because bees just eat plant products and puke it up, right?
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's
And we have honey.
concentrated nectar more than anything, right? They're
Right, right.
taking in nectar from a plant that has some mild sweetness to it, and they concentrate that in their gut and turn it into honey. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that's sort of the basic principles. And yeah, like you said, they vomit it back up, and that's their stored food. I mean, you think of it as a cow with cud. They're chewing this stuff down, breaking down the grass, but then they have to sort of regurgitate up that sort of how fibrous material that wasn't able to get broken down. Then they chew the living hell out of it again, and then swallow that back again into another stomach, and it continues this process.
Yep.
So you can think of honey sort of like cud. Cud is, it's sort of half digested, and it's going to be further food for the cow, but it's not part of the cow. And so the bee making honey, that's partially digested nectar, which they then regurgitate to store later for and give to other bees in the hive that don't go out and collect nectar, and for the queen and things like that, and also for the winter when there aren't when there aren't any flowering plants and nectar around. So
Yeah.
that's what that's for. It's not really an animal product, in the sense that it comes from an animal, that you're this is part of an animal sort of thing. Um, no, I don't ever care to deviate from these things. I mean, I think that if people don't want to eat a completely strict diet, a carnivore diet, or have a bit of plants, or have a bit of fruit and honey, that's completely up to them. I think that you 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 will be healthiest if you don't, but you can still be a lot healthier than a lot of other people, even if you
Yeah.
still include a little bit of that stuff. So, I'm not like a hard people call me like, it's like, oh, they're so dogmatic to say you have. No, I've never said that. I'm just saying
Right,
that
right.
like plants have toxins, and that sugar is not great for you. And I do feel that there are significant benefits from being in a ketogenic metabolism. I think that's our main metabolism. It's primary metabolism of nearly every single animal on Earth because they're just eating fat and protein. They're not eating carbohydrates. Even
Right.
herbivores, they break down fibrous plants, and they don't absorb the glucose. It's the bacteria that eat the fiber and the glucose.
When
Cows
you
can't
were
even break
when
down
you're talking
fiber.
about how the cow regurgitates it and then it
Mhm.
and chews it up again and goes back into its next stomach. Have you ever watched that happen? Like just sat down and just watched a cow
Not
chew?
closely, but I've sort of seen cows chewing cud, but
Yeah, I grew up on a cattle ranch. It was just something kind of meditative. It was one of my favorite things to do is just watch the cows do that. But you're absolutely right, and that's how they are able to metabolize and digest plants in a way that humans can't, because our digestive system is way closer to like a lion or a dog.
I was
So
gonna just say real quick too, because you did ask a question about, do I think there's any use in plants apart from short-term medicinal
oh
purposes? I
yeah,
think that's
yeah,
the main purpose. But as survival, we do have an herbivorous past. Our ancestors were herbivores about 8 million years ago, and people think like, well, we're closest relative is chimpanzees, so that's how we should eat. Like we split off from them 8 million years ago, so no, that's not our closest relative. It's closest living relative, but like Neanderthal and things like that, or where you want to look at, and actually, humans is
yeah,
what you want to look at. Um, and so because we have had that herbivorous past and we only switched to full apex predator status around 2.5 million years ago, we still have a bit of defenses to these plant toxins. And so we've been able to survive more on them than say like a lion would. If a lion can't get meat, it dies. That's it. And
right.
so, but if we don't get a kill, we can find some roots and tubers or fruits and berries or honey or something like that, and we can survive. So it's survival food, but it's not optimal. So if you had fatty meat available to you, then no, I don't think there's any advantage to eating plants outside of medicinal purposes. But being able to eat certain plants and knowing how to prepare them to lower the toxic load and bring out the bioavailability with fermenting, cooking, nixtamalization, mixing with different compounds such as ash and clay and different things like that. That these are very beneficial in survival situations,
Hmm.
and so it's actually quite good information to have to know what you can survive on and how to prepare different plants and things like that in case you do have to do that. If you're going to eat plants, you should eat them in the traditional ways that fermented and broken down these toxins as much as possible. But no, if
Yeah.
you have meat available, I don't think that there's any advantage to eating them.
Okay. Wow, so much there, man. So uh, I'm hearing you and Dr. Kilt say something basically very very similar, which is rule of thumb: all plants, if you do have plants in your diet, they should be minimized, and you cook them all the way through. And meats, try to cook them as little as possible. I imagine that your steaks are probably pretty rare, like close to raw.
Yeah, pretty much. I usually, well, my personal preference is that seared on the outside, basically raw on the inside, and that's just what tastes better to
Me
me.
too. Yeah.
And but there's nothing strictly that we know of that is strictly required that you lose from cooking in meat for most people. Some people may have a
Mm,
inbuilt taurine deficiency. Maybe they don't make enough taurine or glutamine or something like that, and that will denature out. If you cook it, barring that, you should be able to get everything. We've been cooking meat for at least 1.6 million years. We don't know how much we have cooked things. We don't know if it's been, medium rare, or whatever. We just know that people have been cooking for, with fire for about 1.6 million years. With plants, not everything is going to be denatured just by cooking it, but that is one way of denaturing a lot of things. But fermenting is a very powerful way of breaking down some of these defense chemicals. And so there's a lot of different ways, but there are traditional ways of preparing plants, and
and
you
when
should
when you
look at
talk about
those.
sorry to interrupt. When
Sorry.
you say chemicals, are you referring to things like gliadin, glyphosates, lectins, oxalates? What in particular?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of well, I mean, again, there's about a million different defense chemicals that plants make. And then obviously there's all the chemicals that we add to it. I mean, that's its whole other story. I don't think you're not
Mhm.
going to cook out glyphosate, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But you could potentially ferment it out because the ruminant process that the cows go through in fermenting that food, it seems to be able to break down glyphosate, which is great. No, I was talking about mixing different chemicals in with the plants.
Mhm.
So you can actually mix corn with lye, which is sodium hydroxide, basic chemical, base chemical, and so it breaks down a lot of the toxins in corn and breaks down a lot of the bonds that are hiding these nutrients, because that's another way that plants defend themselves is by trapping their nutrients and binding them in chemical bonds that we can't access because we don't have the enzymes to do so, which is proof positive that we're not designed to eat them because we don't have the inherent designed to break down these chemical bonds and denature these toxins. And so if you have to cook it, if you have to ferment it, if you have to add, sodium hydroxide and clay or ash to these things to lower the toxic load and cut these bonds, then obviously we're not designed to do that ourselves. So yeah, so that's what I was talking about. You
Well,
can add different chemicals to help that process.
okay. That makes a lot more sense now. Thanks so much for that. Um, you made a comment a few minutes ago about how you don't see any reason to ever go out of your way to, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but how you don't ever see any reason to go out of your way to put carbs in your diet outside of something, maybe a weird medical condition or survival or something. What about being the best athlete that you can possibly be? So you're a professional rugby player, and I was not a professional bodybuilder until this last year, and now I'm a professional
Yes.
bodybuilder. Thanks.
Congrats. Yeah.
Um, thanks a lot. And so I haven't had sugar in years.
Mhm.
I've been pretty much strict carnivore, and the only exceptions that I've put in, really, outside the lion diet, have been eggs. Although I've been pretty much red meat based, and then some keto treats here and there, but no vegetables and no fruits. Keto brick. That basically sums up my diet for like the last 3 or 4 years. Okay. However, never ever consumed carbohydrates, but right now, this morning, I weighed 170 pounds, and I gain about 20 pounds naturally when I load up on carbohydrates. And so so my last show, I used my co-host Richard Smith, his uh, triple refeed protocol, which is to refeed on fats and then carbs and then exogenous ketones in that order. So I don't feel like I'm any less healthy for having done that, but it's certainly not something that I recommend to do all the time. um,
Mhm.
and so I guess that's the two times that I did eat carbs this year was to fill out for two bodybuilding shows. So, do you have anybody that you work with? I know that you just uh, uh, published a very, very helpful video on the ketogenic diet for athletes, and um, even showcased a number of athletes that have done quite well on a strict carnivore diet. And I guess I'm just kind of wondering what role carbs play in being the best athlete that you can possibly be, even at a professional level.
Yeah. So when you went on those carbs, was that just before the competition, or when did you have those carbs?
Yeah, so I had no carbs in um, a year, 2 years, but
Mhm.
before my first time doing this, and so I did a practice run and then one for an actual show. And so the practice one was for a guest posing gig, which is
Mhm.
for a bodybuilding competition that I co-host in Seattle.
Mhm.
And so 4 months after that, I did it again at about 5 or 6 pounds leaner than I was before, and that's when I got my pro card. That was for Phoenix. So
Yeah.
that was
So
two. That,
just
so
Yeah, so carbs just straight before the competition though? So you just ate some carbs right before just to plump up the muscles and look better on the stage, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, strictly
Yeah.
aesthetic. They played absolutely no part in my training whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's the key there, isn't it? If you want to be the best athlete, you're looking at athletic performance. When you're looking at bodybuilding, you're looking for that aesthetic. And so some people will say that, well, you need to have carbohydrates to bulk up, but that doesn't mean that you're putting on muscle. And so when you're eating a lot of
Right.
carbohydrates, people say, well, you need to be in a caloric surplus. What the hell does that mean? That means you're going to put on fat, because if it's a caloric surplus, it's surplus to demand. You don't need it for building muscles. It's going to go into fat. That's a definition in terms. So you need enough protein, you need enough nutrition in order to build muscles maximally for the work that you're doing. If it's a surplus, that's too much. You're going to put in fat. If you're eating carbohydrates, you're going to raise insulin, and that is the fat storage hormone. You're going to put on fat. And so that's why people say, like, well, you can only, if you're putting on muscle, you have to put on fat too. And then you have to cut, and then you're going to lose fat, but you're also going to lose muscle. Yeah, only if you're eating carbohydrates. And so, the thing is too, is that you'll store in, different amounts of glycogen will draw water into your muscles, and but you'll also deposit intramuscular fat. It's called myosteatosis, and we see this on MRIs, and you see this on your plate every single day when you have marbling on a steak, because that's how you get that marbling, that intramuscular fat, that myosteatosis. That's how you produce that in a cow, by giving them carbohydrates, excess carbohydrates, and then they
Wow.
increase their insulin, and that forces fat deposition in inappropriate places like muscles. And we get that too. And you can see this on MRI. We see this all the time on MRI. We see fatty infiltrates in the muscles, and bodybuilders do this purposefully, and they're just bulking up and giving themselves pre-diabetes or diabetes in some cases, and then they're going to cut, and it's typically ketogenic. It's just a bunch of lean protein, lean protein, lean protein, and you cut out the carbs, you cut out fat, and then you shred down, and that's a typical bulk and cut cycle for bodybuilders. And so, what was that second part? It's ketogenic. You have no carbohydrates, and the fat goes away. Well, look at that. Well, what if you just don't eat the carbs in the first place? You won't put the fat on in the first place.
For
You
sure.
don't need carbs to put on muscle. Now, if you want just that short-term plump to look bigger on the stage, fine. But that's not necessarily going to give you a better performance as an athlete and better results if you did that during your training. So, if you need to do something, y- we do things sometimes that are not in the best interest of our health, that get us somewhere where we want to be. You're doing some sort of,
Yeah.
elite event, and it's really hard on your body, and you're just destroying yourself, but you just want to do it because you want to win the competition or
Yeah.
compete or something like that.
That's a risk and reward, and it comes down to a personal decision.
Exactly. And so
Mhm.
that can be a bit of an advantage for that, but that doesn't mean that eating those carbs are beneficial, but you having that aesthetic look, sure. That's a very specific case though. It wouldn't be like someone, I wouldn't I don't think you need to do that outside of that. You know what I mean? Um
Sure.
as far as like being your best self as an athlete, I think there are massive, massive advantages to being ketogenic. First and
Mhm.
foremost, if you have a very lean athlete, say a 65-kilo individual who only has 6% body fat, so a real lean, hard guy, right? That 65-kilo man, maximally carb loading, just dumping all the carbs that they can before competition, can maximally stuff in about 2,400 kilocalories of energy in his muscles and liver as glycogen. That's it. And so 2,400 calories. So that'll get you through some competitions, but not bigger ones. And you will run out. You will run out of energy, and you run out of glycogen, and you'll not be able to get into your fat stores, because insulin, when that's elevated, blocks your fat, and you cannot burn your fat. You can't use that energy from your fat. But that same 65-kilo individual with 6% body fat, that 6% body fat has over 35,000 kilocalories of energy, which is over 15 times the amount of energy that the glycogen can store for that individual. So you're tapped into 15 times more energy, and you're just not going to run out. You don't need to be sucking down gels and sugar packets. You're not just
Right.
hitting the wall and all that sort of stuff. You just feel great all the time. And I've experienced this as well in my own athletic endeavors. I just felt amazing. I just had just an unlimited battery. I could just keep going. It's also beneficial to performance. You were seeing once you get keto adapted, and that's something that's very important for people to realize, is that it can take weeks to months for your body to start utilizing ketones better. Now you'll make ketones in the first few days, but you can't use those ketones properly. You don't use those efficiently for a few weeks. And so people find that it's usually after about week 2 or 3 that you start performing to your same athletic potential when you switch to a ketogenic diet, and then it just starts getting better and better and better after that. Um, so you need to understand that, but there's large scale studies with controlled trials and elite athletes. Some of them are randomized controlled crossover trials where they switch the keto groups halfway through, and again, there's no drop in performance, and sometimes improvement in performance as long as they're keto adapted long enough. And that's for endurance, that's for sprinting, explosive sports, and explosive sports as well, and explosive activities as well. So,
Hmm.
it's every single athletic endeavor. The longer you're keto adapted, the better your performance. Um, there are some people that talk about how, well, yes, being ketogenic in your training and all that stuff is the best. And when you compete, having 20 grams of carbs per hour for like an ultra marathon or something like that, that could just kick you off into the next sort of dimension. That may or may not be true. That needs to be studied. There is one, and I've certainly noticed that without any carbs, that no one was catching up to me when I was playing. But
Hmm.
I was just there was no one fitter. Like, it was just ridiculous how fit I could get. I just couldn't run out of energy. So, and I certainly never had any carbs. But there is something called the central governor of fatigue, which is something that's been studied, for the past 10, 15 years,
Hmm.
where they look at athletes, and they studied in carb athletes. So this may not even happen in ketogenic athletes, but carb fueled athletes, they'll sort of hit this wall, even though they have plenty of energy, they have plenty of glycogen in their muscles and their liver, but their body starts slowing down, going like, "Oh, this isn't good." And it seems to be there's something in your brain going like, "Look, you're expending too much energy. We don't have enough in store. You're going to have to slow this down." And they find that just having a sip of something sweet like sugar water or something like that, that all of a sudden they just bounce right back. So they go, okay, well, you need that energy. But then they tested it with, you just put sugary water in your mouth and swish it around, but don't swallow and spit it out. That also has the exact same benefit.
Wow.
So yeah, so it could very well be that these athletes are getting that bit of a boost because of the central governor of fatigue. Because if you look at the amount of fat that's oxidized per hour, when you're doing these sorts of exercises, and you look at how much energy that is, it's far in excess of what even a strenuous Ironman is going to require per hour. So there's an abundance of energy available through fat oxidization, that you just you don't need to add carbs to that. So it might be this benefit is from that central governor of fatigue. And so people could play around with that. If they feel that they're just sort of crashing. I never felt like crashing when I was fully keto adapted. So that was just never a problem for me. But if someone does notice that, maybe try that. Maybe switch around something sweet, some sugary water, something like that. Spit it out, see how you go, because that's something that's actually been pretty well studied, in at least carbohydrate athletes anyway. So something, that's interesting there. But with studies with Professor Noakes, with Professor Volek, Professor Finney, Professor McSweeney, or Dr. McSweeney, like they've all shown in elite athletes that the ketogenic athletes have massive benefits, improvements, and performance, and at least no drop in their performance at the very least. And that, in fact, McSweeney showed an improvement in long distance sprinting and explosive exercises, for as long as they were keto adapted for 3 months. And Noakes showed that there's no drop off at 6 weeks, and there was a crossover trial, so keto became carb and vice versa. And again, after 6 weeks, no drop off in their performance. They could just go at the same level. So, and then at 3 months, you started getting an improvement. So some of these long-term improvements could be from being more keto adapted, and that can take 4, 5, 6 months to become fully keto adapted. And you can measure this with your urea, because urea um, competes for elimination in the kidneys with ketones. And so if you're still spilling out ketones in your urine, then obviously you're not using them, and you're just wasting that energy. And so when you become fully keto adapted, typically you won't find any testable levels of ketones in your urine unless you're like fasting for a period of time. Um, and And people get worried. They think like, oh my goodness, I'm not in ketosis. I've got what's happening?
But your
Well, you
body's
get your
just
blood
getting more,
ketones and they're
it's
fine.
getting more efficient at using it. It's not wasting
Yeah,
it as much. Wow.
exactly. If you're peeing it
Wow.
out, then you're not using it. That's not good. Um, and so you can check your urea. You can check your urine test strips and see if there's any ketones there. And if they're not there, then you have blood ketones. You don't have urine ketones, and you're probably using what you're making. But also urea. Urea goes up for everybody. Everybody worries, oh my goodness, urea. Urea is one of the body's strongest antioxidants. It's just fine being slightly elevated. It doesn't cause gout. Every single person who fasts, every single person who goes on a ketogenic diet raises their urea for this reason, and almost no
Yeah.
one gets gout in general, not even in that group. So over time that urea level comes down, but it can take, studies have shown that, after 4 or 5 months it's still slightly elevated, but it's coming down. And so that can be these long-term effects. You can still be getting benefits after 6 months, and so just from keto adaptation. After 3 months on a ketogenic diet, you typically turn on autophagy. Well, you do turn on autophagy and mitophagy. You start turning over your older damaged cells, making new ones, new mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of the cell. And they do so much more than that. They're not just
Hmm.
energy production.
Hmm.
And after about 3 months, you have 4 times the number of mitochondria, and they're 4 times as effective on a ketogenic diet. So that's a massive benefit as well. Um, and I have so many patients and athletes that I work with, friends who are athletes, and people that I've just seen that do their blood work, and like men, even professional athletes, male professional athletes, they'll check their testosterone levels after 3 4 months, 6 months to a year, whatever. They're doubling their testosterone as a professional athlete. I mean, you can't tell me that's not an advantage as a professional athlete. I mean, especially like in bodybuilding, people are taking testosterone, they're taking anabolics in order to get more of a hormonal boost, and you just change the way you eat and you double your testosterone right off the bat. I mean, that's a massive advantage as an athlete.
What's up, carnivores? Friendly reminder not to overtrain your muscles or your mind for that matter. So we're going to take a break for a couple minutes, and I'm going to share something inspiring and something entertaining for a second, and then we'll get right back into the meat. Every week we feature a listener-inspiring success story from one of you, and we call it L.I.S.S for short, not to be confused with low-intensity, steady-state cardio. This week is a little bit different. She is down 100 pounds, and you are probably going to recognize her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, my better half.
Hello, everybody. This is Taylor. I am excited to be back on Carnivore Coach's Corner to share my testimony. I recently just hit 100 pounds of weight loss or fat loss since 2021. And this is when I started the carnivore ketovore diet, and I am just so excited about the progress that I have made. I actually just had to do a closet overhaul because none of my old clothes fit. So I got rid of about 80% of my stuff, and I'm just excited to bless somebody else with those and just see what the rest of this year brings. I'm really excited about continuing to put on some muscle mass and maybe even possibly competing. So if I have one piece of advice for anybody, it would just be to never give up. You're going to have your ups and your downs. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be hard. But at the end of the day, you have to choose your hard. Is your hard going to be waking up every day, getting your workout in, sticking to your meal plan, or is your hard going to be starting over again and again and again? I just chose one day to not stop, and I'm really excited and grateful and thankful for where it has gotten me. So anyways, just wanted to share some of that encouragement with you and hope you all have a wonderful and blessed week.
Thanks a lot for that, babe. So proud of you. You kidding me? Guys, you definitely need to follow her if you're on Instagram. It is TaylorMilton_fit. She is documenting her weight loss journey, stuff that she's feeding the kids, workouts, and absolutely crushing it. So super proud of you, babe. Thanks a lot. You know who I am not proud of, however, not proud of at all, because now it's time to talk about our bad coach call out of the week. But this guy named Dr. Allo, okay? proof here. There is still no shortage of fraudulent coaches online, so beware who you listen to it on social media. Careful who you're following, okay? Clowns, bellends, excuse my language, especially on that second one. But whatever you want to call these guys, here's another deceptive Instagram reel that was sent to me by one of our listeners. So keep them coming, guys, please. Somebody's got to say something to these fake coaches that are spreading lies. So once again, send me whatever videos got you confused on your facts, and Richard Smith and I will help you pick it apart. And so here you go.
Patient's been on carnivore for 90 days, lost 33 pounds, is still over 300.
90 days? Congratulations, you made it past the hardest part.
His LDL is 217. What should I do? Do I need to be treated? Basically, he's asking. Yes, in the meantime, you probably should be treated.
Whoa, time out. So you are suggesting that he gets on treatment, not even considering any other factors. Well, the studies that I'm aware of, at least the recent studies, I don't know this gentleman, are suggesting that he's probably not even at risk for heart disease and he's right on track.
That LDL is insanely high and you are doing damage. Anytime your LDL is above 60, the majority of trials have shown that you are actively building plaque.
Okay, so you are so right. 100% spot on for once. On the plaque, that is. And so the glycocalyx, that's what we need to be paying the most attention to. And so that's actually the first line of defense against LDL particles that penetrate the line of arteries and lodge beneath them. And over time, that causes plaque buildup. And the biggest destroyer of the glycocalyx, do you want to guess what it is? Carbs, especially from processed refined grains and sugars. One more reason to go carnivore. See what I mean, everybody? Crazy shit. Okay, back into the interview with Dr. Chaffee.
Like in bodybuilding, people are taking testosterone, they're taking anabolics in order to get more of a hormonal boost, and you just change the way you eat and you double your testosterone right off the bat. I mean, that's a massive advantage as an athlete. And
you don't see a lot of carnivore bodybuilders that are on steroids. It's like they start craving carbs, and then it's like, well, and then I think that they can get away with putting in their diet in a way that natural athletes, probably can't to some degree.
You're putting what in their diet as a natural athlete?
Oh, I was going to say enhanced athletes putting carbs in their diet is not going to, they'll be able to get away with optimal nutrient partitioning in a way that a natural athlete will struggle to. So,
well, I mean, there is that, but I think also you're still going to you're going to be depositing fat as well.
Oh yeah,
and so you're going to be have fat deposition. You think about it too.
And
carbohydrate
and cholesterol, and then that's why we have all these enhanced bodybuilders that are dying young.
Yeah, and insulin.
I think it's as much to do with the carbs as they're eating as it is the drugs.
Yeah, well, it can. I mean, in those studies with Volek and Noakes and these other guys, one thing that they did notice is that the carb athletes, may perform at a similar, equal, or maybe slightly lower level than the keto athlete, but they're all sick. They're all pre-diabetic or diabetic, and these are elite athletes, elite world-class athletes, and they're diabetic. I mean, that should never happen. And so the longevity as an athlete is really key. If you're metabolically sick, if you're hormonally disrupted, like, you're just not going to be able to compete at an elite level for as long as you would otherwise. I mean, even just carbohydrates. Right. So we talk about carbohydrates, they break down your body. They glycate the different molecules. They physically fuse other molecules and damage them. It's called advanced glycation end products, AGEs. They literally age you, and they age your tissue that this happens to, like your cartilage, and they can break down the cartilage and cause arthritis and degenerative disc disease and to degenerative spines. And so when we're taking out these discs and cartilage from bunged up joints, people have actually studied this and found that they're full of advanced glycation end products. So that breakdown in cartilage and tissue comes from eating carbohydrates. And so if you want to last as an athlete and then have a life after you're an athlete and not just be a broken cripple, like some people are, then that's something you need to consider as well. Yeah. And there's so many other longevity benefits as an athlete that you just preserve your ability to be an athlete longer.
Definitely. So we've been talking a lot about the carnivore diet, the lion diet more specifically,
Mhm.
which to touch on aging, the more you eat red meat, I guess that's from the research that I've done, is the only food that I can find on planet Earth that's been proven to extend your telomeres, right? So that should make you live longer. But I guess at any rate, as athletes, we're always trying to, I guess, mix the two, right? Carnivore and keto. So I guess
Mm.
what I mean by that is the only problem that I'm having on the lion diet right now. This is my fourth time doing it. We've done it 3 times together as a team, and so right now I'm doing it pretty well strict, and this is everybody else that I'm training right now. I would say their
Yes.
diets. Thanks. I would say that they're kind of all over the planet, and so most of their diets are 90% red meat, and then I have my coffee drinkers. You know, I've learned not to take coffee out of someone's diet without asking politely. um, but
Yeah.
so personally, I've made it the entire month now. It's the 30th, yeah, with red meat, water, and salt only, no caffeine. The only exceptions that I've had have been Richard Smith's exogenous ketones. I figured that's
Mhm.
hopefully not too much of a sin. Um,
Mhm.
because man, oh man, with the amount of music gigs that I play and the amount of workouts that I do, I kind of live on it for those two things, if nothing else.
Mm.
And so whenever I have a dip in energy, that pretty much fixes it, and then maybe like some salt. And then my fats, I've had to get creative at supplementing my fats. So I'm currently 40 hours fasted right now,
Mhm.
and I've had a big bowl of bone broth, and that's it that I've consumed during the fast. And so I hope that doesn't like make me have to exchange my fasting card in. uh, but yeah, so basically, like goose fat, duck fat, and coconut oil. Those are the only fats that I really that I've really been supplementing. So, do you think that I'm like a bad example in any way for the lion diet, or like losing any of my results that I could be getting out of it to really I guess get all the benefits that everybody wants out of the lion diet, and that's improved skin, that's improved body composition. So far, I'm seeing all of them, so I don't see any reason to stop.
I think that's the main thing, you know, if you're doing this and this is helping you and it's giving you the results that you want, then that's great. You can always try playing around with it and only using fat from, you know, ruminant animal, right? Like sheep and beef tallow. You could try that. You see if that makes any difference, and if it doesn't, then do whatever you want. You know, one of you know the reason that the lion diet, meaning just ruminant meat and fat, is so helpful for people is because it's like an elimination diet on top of an elimination diet. With you carnivore diet, you're eliminating out these things that could potentially harm you, but then some people react negatively to some of the things that the animals are being fed. And if it's a ruminant animal, then it can break that down and ferment it before it absorbs it, and so it sort of gets rid of that, and like the glyphosates, right? So if you have chicken or fish or pork or the eggs from chickens, etc., that that have been fed glyphosate-ridden garbage that they're not designed to eat, plants that they're not designed to eat and break down, those toxins are going to get into their system more. The linoleic acid is going to get in in their fat more. The glyphosate is going to get into them as well. And while it's going to filter some of that out and it's going to be able to break some of that down, it's still not going to eliminate out as much as the red meat, as the ruminant meat, right? So
Right.
that's the main thing. It really comes down to what the animal ate. You know, when you break up the food chain, there's a problem. You know, we're at the top of the food chain. For us to be as healthy as we can be, every step in the food chain below that needs to be intact. And so, you know, if you just sort of cut off the food chain here, you're like salmon, they're supposed to be eating fish that eat fish that eat fish that eat algae. But then you farm them and you stick them in there and you don't even feed them algae, you feed them a bunch of corn and soy. That's crazy. You know, you've completely disrupted that food chain. Those salmon are not going to be as healthy. They're not going to have the nutrients that they need that aren't going to be as healthy. You know, all the healthy reasons that we eat salmon, you lose the majority of those when you eat farmed salmon because the salmon are not eating what they're supposed to eat. I have heard of people doing farmed or starting up fish farms that are actually feeding them real food that fish are supposed to eat. Okay, so that's going to help that. But that's what doing a lion diet can help, is that you're eliminating out now animals that maybe aren't being fed what they're supposed to eat. And so you just get to like one step cleaner. Not everybody has to do that. If somebody has an autoimmune issue,
Hmm.
that's your baseline. That's where you start, and you do that for a while until your autoimmune issues are under control. Some people are even so sensitive they need to only eat beef and lamb that have been grass fed their entire lives as well. And then some people will try that. Okay, they'll get really good results, and then maybe they'll add some eggs in. Maybe they'll add some, you know, duck fat in. Maybe they'll add, bacon or something like that, and then they'll just see how that affects them. Most people with autoimmune issues really do need to stick to a lion diet, or they'll start to react. But some can get
Wow.
away with a bit more. If that's not a problem for you though, and you feel like you're getting great results doing what you're doing, then go for it. Um, I it's yeah, I've never found that I have really saved my life a lot of times, because when I'm not really in the hospital anymore. I'm just seeing patients in my private practice. But when I'm doing on calls and things like that, last year and the years before that, it was grueling. I mean, it was absolutely insane how many hours you're doing. You do at least 36 hours straight, if not 48 to 64 hours straight. Now, you may get a chance to take a nap in there, may, but it's not guaranteed. And so I've worked 60 plus hours with 1 or 2 hours of sleep a night. And it's been really busy and
Mhm.
hellish. And so being able to, eating the way I am is the only way I was able to do that and not
That's
crash
the
and
point that,
just
that's the point that I got to in life, and why I'm just trying to copy the way that you do it is because,
yeah.
like, especially if you're going to do a fast, it's like if I schedule those in the days where I'm where I'm, where my lifestyle is. I feel like my equivalent to what you just described,
Mhm.
and, because I just don't have time to eat throughout the day. So our timer just went off. I do
Mhm.
have 3 client questions that we could probably tackle in 5 minutes, but man, I know that you are packed
That's all right.
at the at.
We,
Sure, we
we,
can knock
we
them
we can
out.
do them quickly. Yeah, sure.
Oh, awesome, fantastic. Okay, so I guess just piggybacking off of that, then that's a good segue into this one. Angela and I, she's a new IPL Pro too. You'd be super proud of her, man.
Nice.
Everything that Coach Richard taught me to do this year, in terms of carnivore bodybuilding, it worked for her better than it has for me. So she's actually quite a bit more accomplished than I am this year. But
Awesome.
thanks. We're gonna do a prolonged fast sometime next week.
Mhm.
And I've done fast with caffeine and without caffeine. Obviously, this one will be without caffeine and without any other like dirty supplements or anything. Um, but I'm really liking how I feel right now, at
Mhm.
40 hours fasted with just having had goose bone broth. And so, have you ever done a fast with bone broth? And
Mm.
just do you have any tips on fasting, dry fasting? Like how would you do it if you were
Yeah.
going to do a 40-hour fast?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest expert on fasting, because I found out so many studies looking at fasting mimicking diets, which is a ketogenic diet. It's just the ketogenic diets are sort of a four-letter word in a lot of academic circles. So
Hmm.
there are thousands and thousands and thousands of studies showing the benefits of fasting and done in certain ways. And so there have been many studies that have been done saying, okay, well, look, there's all these benefits to fasting. We're particularly interested in these, and but that's very difficult. It's very difficult for people to fast. These studies are showing that you have to fast for like a minimum of 4 days a month in order to get these benefits, and so that's hard for people to do. But what about just being in the metabolic state you get in to fasting, but still eating food? So a fasting mimicking diet.
Right.
Uh, you're eating food, you're not mimicking fasting. I'm sorry. Like we need to change your terminology.
Yeah.
And so those have at least for those endpoints and those outcomes, they found that fasting mimicking diets, which is a ketogenic diet, had the exact same outcomes and sometimes even better outcomes than just fasting alone. I think the vast majority of benefit you get from fasting is just not eating the wrong thing and keeping your insulin low so that you're in a ketogenic fat burning state. Now, you can eat a carnivore diet and just eat all the time and do all these sorts of things and start mucking around with your insulin and things like that, and it cause a bit of a problem as well. People tend to naturally fall into like a more of a intermittent fasting rhythm, eating 1 or 2 big meals a day, and that seems to do well for people. And then other people that don't have a gallbladder, they have to split up their fatty meals throughout the day, and so they still do great with multiple smaller meals throughout the day. So if you are now, there may be some clinical reasons to do this, like say for um, cancer, something like that. You really want to get your GKI down. You want to get your glucose down really low and your ketones really high. That's been shown in multiple clinical and preclinical studies to improve outcomes and longevity and reduce mortality rate. And so that can be very helpful. And sometimes people can do that just on a strict ketogenic carnivore diet or just a ketogenic diet, and sometimes they can't. Sometimes they need to fast for a period of time to get their blood sugar even lower and get their ketones even higher. And so for something like that, I think that does have utility. But I typically like to do water fasts. Dry fasts kind of freak me out. I've sort of experimented with a couple of them. I got to about 48 hours. And I just was just thirsty as hell, and I'm just like, screw that. I stopped making urine, and I'm just like, all right, screw this. I'm drinking some water, and I do know other people that like them. My friend Dr. John Jaquish, he talks a lot about fasting and how like there was a study that looked at once you hit like 5 days, you actually were still making water. You're making metabolic water and with your uh, mitochondria, and you do.
There's like 3
Um,
or 4 real big health benefits or claims that people say that they get from dry fasting. So,
Yeah, and there's like one that Jake was talking about that like after 5 days of dry fasting, um, your your adipose tissue, your fat cells actually start to burst and rupture and go away. Now, we look at that as a benefit because we typically have too much fat, but is that actually beneficial in nature? You want your fat cells. Let's say you have the right amount of
right.
fat cells that nature designed for you. Popping them and destroying them may be not what you want to do. Now, if you've stimulated this excessive growth in fat cells because you're eating a whole bunch of sugar and carbs as an infant, which is when these are proliferating, you'll get more permanent fat tissue as a result of this. Yeah, maybe getting rid of some of those is not a bad idea to get back to where you were. But if you did have the right amount, then that would not be good, would it? So is that process of benefit in certain circumstances? Sure, but it's not. I don't see that as like, oh, this is a really good idea. This is what nature intended in order to get this good result. I think that that's probably a bad result that just happened to be good in a certain situation. I mean, taking digitalis, if you eat that from foxglove, you take too much, your heart stops and you die. Okay, so that's bad. But if you have heart failure and your heart's not beating and contracting properly, taking a very small amount of that poison will make it contract harder and will increase your cardiac output and you'll feel better. Okay, so in that circumstance, it's okay, but no one else should be taking digitalis, right? And you certainly shouldn't be, taking more than the specific amount that you need for that heart failure. So I think of that as like that's a bit of something that kind of scares me. That I think that's probably something that just because we're all obese, that maybe we look at that as a good thing, but I think of that as that process where your cells and your tissue start to die is probably not in your long-term favor.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Beautiful answer to that. Thanks so much.
Mm,
um, we are so over time. One more quick one. Is that okay? Before
sure.
you, okay, yeah, it's a super quick one. So Robyn from Kansas, she's new on the carnivore diet as of 4 months ago. She's down 40 pounds. We track
Nice.
weight. Thanks. We track weight loss, and so we have our clients weigh themselves as often as they can, or as often as they're comfortable with, so that we have an average, and then measurements and progress pictures. That's pretty much it. Body fat testing only for competitive bodybuilders, right? But you were talking on the on one of your recent podcasts about how you take your waist measurement lying down, and we're just
Oh
kind of
yeah.
curious as to why. Like what difference does that make?
Yeah, so when you check your waist circumference in medicine, the accurate way to do that is do it lying down because if someone's very lean, it's probably not going to make much of a difference. But if someone has like a pannus of fat, and their gut sort of it'll sort of sag down, won't it? Right? And so it'll sort of move and shift, and so you actually get sort of different thicknesses. It's just not as accurate. So if you lay down on your back, then gravity's there and it just sits there and it's very stable. And so then you check the circumference of your waist around the umbilicus, the belly button, and that's going to be more accurate. So it's not going to, and what if you're sort of at a slightly different angle and sort of up down here, whatever, it's not quite perfect and it's sagging in different ways, like you'll get different results. So it's just an accuracy thing. And that if you're laying down on your back, like that's just the technique, that's the proper technique that's taught in order to get a waist circumference that's accurate, but it's typically it's gonna make more of an impact if someone has a higher body fat percentage.
Heck yeah. Well, I'll start teaching it that way then, because you've never been wrong before, or at least from what I found. So, thank you a lot so much, Dr. Anthony Chaffee. See, I've been
Yeah.
looking forward to this for forever, and so
Oh, thanks.
yeah, I've learned absolutely so much here. I'm gonna plug all of your all of your, I guess, media outlets in the descriptions of the podcast. Is there anywhere in particular where you're like the most active right now, to where our listeners should go follow you? Or
YouTube and Instagram, I'm most, you know, yeah, and X. So like YouTube and Instagram is just Anthony Chaffee MD. On X, it's Anthony_Chaffee. And I have a Patreon group that I meet with twice a week, and answer questions and hang out, things like that. And so we have a good community there. So those are the main ones that I'm active in the most.
super stuff. Well, God bless you again. Thanks
Mhm.
so much. Enjoy the rest of your trip. I hope that you travel safe. Have you been to Fogo de Chao in Seattle?
Yeah, I have previously been out on this trip. I'm sure I'll be there. I'll get there eventually though.
That's the best restaurant in town, man, for sure. All
Awesome.
right. Well,
Bet.
thanks so much again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, man. Good to see you.
And on that note, for this week, we're going to call it a wrap. I know, a cheese or an egg wrap, of course, not like an actual flour tortilla or anything. That would be way too many carbs, way too much glyphosate, right? But thanks again for listening, and make sure to let us know what you thought. Feel free to shoot either Richard Smith or myself an email. You can find me at admin@supersetyourlife.com. And then Rich is rich@the.carnivorecutie.com. You can send us a DM on Instagram. I am at Colt Milton, and Rich is at Richard Anthony Smith. Rich and I both offer private one-on-one nutritional consultations and monthly coaching services for those who are serious about getting some real results. So first call, if you've never booked with either of us, is always free. If you're one of our listeners, we'd love to hear your story, answer your questions, and get you pointed in the right directions in the best way possible. And so carnivore coaching has been a cause worth dedicating our lives to. It's who we are, and we'd be honored to help you experience what this lifestyle has done for us, our families, and our clients. So thanks a lot, everybody who's been subscribed and listening since the very beginning. And for those who have recently joined, your ratings, your reviews, your shares got us to where we're at right now. That's all that we have to say until next week. And so until then, you can check out Richard's Keto Pro podcast. Richard Smith and his guests teach how to improve their health and well-being using a ketogenic diet. So a lot like this channel, Richard frequently features popular guests such as Dr. Anthony Chaffee, Dr. Jen Unwin, and many others. And then you got my workout motivation podcast. Okay, it's called the supersetyourlife.com podcast, and it's a podcast specifically recorded to listen to while you work out. We regularly interview professional bodybuilders and judges, top nutritionists, leadership experts, stand-up comedians, pastors, top athletes from supersetyourlife.com, and we keep the focus on health first, bodybuilding, faith, and family. I publish every Monday and every Friday typically. Lately, it's been about once a week because we've been slammed with a lot as business, family, you name it. On that note, creatine, glutamine, amino acids, other performance supplementation, including exogenous ketones. American customers, you can check out my online supplement store, which is supersetyourlife.com under the supplement tab. And then European customers, Coach Richard's supplement store in the United Kingdom, the.carnivorecutie.com. Okay. So thanks a lot, everybody. And we'll catch you next week on session number 92. And spoiler alert, it's going to be with Daniel Trevor, author of The Unholy Trinity. Looking forward to this conversation so much you have no idea. Hope to catch you there. Like I said, that will be session number 92. So until then, say this with us: eat like a lion, live like a lion. Love you guys. God bless, and have a good week until then.